Alright, should be recording now. Yep, I see the file for Chapter 11 of Star Trek 6 Undiscovered Country. I did realize something that I thought of in the previous video, but then completely forgot to mention. So, what you see in the movie, and kind of also was described here, when Martia changes shape, her clothing changes with her, which would mean then that it's part of her. So she is actually going to be susceptible to the cold of a repente, because it's basically her skin then. Again, this would also apply to Odo in Deep Space Nine, but that it's all, whatever you're seeing is always himself, except for the time when he's spent as a human, or at least as a solid humanoid. But that doesn't really bother me, because I don't recall there ever being a time that it was indicated that the cold impaired him in any way. And plus, there's also, I think the episode's name is Chimera in season 7, where there's the other changeling that is actually traveling through space, which, I would say, again, it's like his skin is in direct contact with outer space, so it's like, that would be a bit of a problem, but it's also showing that, well, no, they can, in fact, just resist this. Martia, however, we don't know that for certain, so. Anyhow. But it's just one of those technical things about shapeshifters that is technically an issue. Okay, so the first highlight I have here, instinctively, Scotty, reached out toward the nearby air circulation vent to cool himself, because he's feeling kind of hot and going like that, like you see in the movie. No air, the vent was blocked. Which actually doesn't line up with what's in the movie, because in the movie, he is seated like over here. The vent's all the way over there, as like for the whole room, so him just reaching out isn't going to do much. I'm saying I got a fan a few feet away doing this. Actually, not really feeling it. Oh, wait. There it is. I can feel a little bit. That's only a few feet away, and it's meant to help cool. I don't have it aimed directly at myself, that's why I have to reach all the way over there. Anyhow. No air, the vent was blocked. Scott frowned. This was a matter for maintenance, but the engineer in him asserted itself. It would take him longer to report it than to fix it himself. So that's how he discovers it. Let me adjust this highlight, because there's one thing stated here that it can make sense for the book, but not the movie. Scott experienced bewilderment for only a millisecond before he registered the colors. Burgundy modeled with violet, and a darker emotion set in. He pulled the uniforms out and hurried to find Spock. So in the movie, they're in like some sort of exosuit kind of thing that has a mask, but it's like presumably something that is sealed so this could go outside. Well, out into outer space. Some sort of environmental suit. Which in the movie makes sense, because you want the visor to hide the face. But previously I'd noticed that they were referred to as being in Starfleet uniforms. It's like, well, that could still be considered a uniform if it is like, official Star Trek, Starfleet wear. So it's like, okay. But no, here, because it's identified as burgundy modeled with violet, it's like, that would be the color of the uniforms that we do typically see them wearing. So I guess it is. They actually went aboard, not necessarily hiding their face, and in their normal uniforms, which is, you can get away with it in the book because the Klingons, at that time, the narrator was following the Klingons. The Klingons have no idea who they are. So they're not going to be able to see them and be like, oh, I know you. So there's no way to identify them then. This is kind of like what I mean, what I was talking about with the narrator stuff before about a false narrator versus just controlling what the narrator observes and shares with you. Where it's like, there is no reason for any of the Klingons to be aware that these two are, in fact, Burke and Samno. There's no reason for them to know them, so they wouldn't identify them and wouldn't even necessarily be able to identify, describe their faces. So they don't need to be hidden in the book. In the movie, they do, because we see them. It's, cameras showing us there. But it is just, you can play with that. So it's like, yeah, they can be in their full Starfleet uniform. It's not an issue. In this. Do have this, and it's like, well, shit. Out of the corner of his eye, Kirk saw McCoy weakly raise his head and shake it as he came to. that pushes it into the cliche territory that I hate. Because he just woke up on his own. It's not oh, I think I'll die now. Somebody's revived me. No, it's as I was saying, sometimes people can get knocked out and they actually recover quickly. Not always. That's apparently all that happened here, even though they were described as suffering from frostbite already. Which is a problem, but I didn't mention it then. But it's like he should be potentially in danger of hypothermia, which that I'm pretty sure does involve you fall asleep, you don't wake up. So him waking up, it's like, that there's reasons why this doesn't make sense without the cliche, and it's the cliche. The frostbite I have an issue with because that's a serious, like, they go from being beamed up to just walking through the ship. It's like, no, frostbite, you gotta go to sickbay to get treated for that. Okay, people lose appendages and limbs from that. And they were in it for potentially in this cold for hours. And it was saying that frostbitten feet, frostbite on their faces. It's like, I mean, one defense could be, well, we're just saying that it feels like biting because it's so cold, because just describing it that way. I don't mean it as the actual technical term, but it's like, yeah, it's a technical term. Use it properly. Isn't it about time you became something else? Jim gasped. Martia's all-too-perfect performance as Kirk had disconcerted him for only a second. Now he realized that it was to his advantage for Martia to retain his guise, especially if the guards arrived before the Enterprise did. She seemed reluctant to change, as if the efforts of shifting so often had drained her. The reverse psychology worked. I like it here, Martia's voice said. So this was also an issue that had occurred to me in the previous chapter. Was like, okay, let's just see how this goes. Maybe she starts adopting Kirk's voice. No, she is consistently using that Martia voice, but they're struggling. Klingons get there, and Kirk is like, so what is the line? What took you so long? And then she's, she does try to yell out, kill him, he's the one. But her voice, her real voice, Jim suspected, was harsher, more guttural than Jim had ever heard before. She is so tired, she's not putting on the Martia voice anymore. She's putting on her normal voice, which I guess sounds more like what they'd expect Kirk to sound like, because, I mean, who actually knows what his voice is? No one's heard him there. But it's not Martia's voice, so they don't know it's her, so it's like, okay, so then he's able to go do the whole, not me, idiot, him! And so she gets killed. Yeah. We get a lot more of the after being beamed up, because, like, if you just left us there for 2 seconds, we would have known. Do have a lot more of that where he is just cursing, and it's also, Chekhov is not just, do you want to go back? He's not just, it's like, you want to go back? Like, he is smiling, he is laughing, he finds it funny. We unfortunately do not get the line from Bones just going, no, it's cold there. Don't get that. It's, absolutely not. What the hell's the matter with you, Jim? We were just rescued. The line in the movie is better. Sorry, but it is. That could be, to be fair, that could be the script changed after after this was written in the novelization, or just never got back to them. Or I could also see that being Nicholas Meyer, because he's the director. As I recall, he's the director of the movie. Just being like, when actually having them there, being like, DeForest, give this line instead. Or even DeForest could have been like, I'd like to give this line instead. It seems more like Bones. And it's, okay, do a take like that. It's like, you know what, you're right. That sounds good. We'll use that. One other thing that is mentioned here, though I didn't highlight it. Oh, wait. No, it comes later. It's, okay, Kirk has already figured out it's Valeris. Spock, it hasn't occurred to him. But Kirk's like, okay, I got a plan for what we can do, but we need to get going. We need to get to the bridge. Anyway, but then it's like, okay, well, who? And we cut straight to Chang being on the bird of prey, exposing that, yes, he's the one behind it. Which, on the one hand, I don't like because we haven't earned it. On the other hand, dude's right there on the cover art. We know it's him because of this. I mean, it does give away his involvement. Not everyone's involvement, but his involvement definitely. Yeah. Chang sat in the command chair of the newest Klingon vessel in the fleet, the Dakron. Dakron. The only ship of her class equipped with the latest in Klingon Romulan technology. Find that a little curious. Because doesn't mean that the Romulans have access to this and can potentially use it themselves. The technology. As well as an innovative new device that enabled her to fire while cloaked. Okay, well, then maybe it's not that the Romulans have access to the device. Sorry, I forgot that. But it still is interesting that it is a product of both of their cultures. Also, a new device that enabled her to fire while cloaked, which indicates it's not just power. It is potentially something else. Or it could just be it's like a capacitor and can just build up enough energy to overcome the power limit. It's like, yeah, that's enough to fire the weapons without disrupting the cloak. Anyway. Chang was deeply proud of his new ship's capabilities. It had enabled him, after all, to successfully eliminate the Empire's two greatest enemies, first Gorkon and now James Kirk. But, and we have cut to him. So in the movie, the camera's behind, we don't see he's there. We just see the Commandant reporting that he's escaped, and then Chang cuts it off and turns and is like, oh, that's him. But as I said, he's right there. We know. We do also have Grok, General Grok, which we saw him earlier in the book, and I'm pretty sure you do also see him in the movie. That he is in both spots. So yes, he is also part of it. Which would mean then it was in the room, Grok and Kurla were presenting the plan for how they can attack the Federation to Ezra Burr, and Chang is off to the side. I think it was just those three generals. So that would mean then that Kurla was potentially, of the three, the only one. I mean, yes, he wanted war, but he was not part of the conspiracy. I got this. That is an interesting technical thing. Because Spock and Kirk are talking as they're walking. Spock is explaining, a bird of prey that can fire while cloaked. She torpedoed Gorkon's ship. So that's it, Kirk mused. The bridge visual had been tailored to make it seem that the torpedoes had been fired from Enterprise. That's significant, because that very much indicates whoever did it, likely on the bridge. I mean, at least somebody who had the ability to influence that system, which could be an auxiliary control. Auxiliary control seemed to only exist in the television series, but it's like, that really does narrow it down a lot to who could do that, and that's not a simple thing to do, I would think. Although I will grant, the idea has occurred to me, I'm not sure if I've mentioned it in a video, that... No, I have, in the Voyage Home videos. Because the images, it makes sense, on the view screen are generated. It's taking in all the sensor information, it's just constructing the image. Which is kind of interesting, because I could believe that's a use for AI at the moment. That it might be able to do certain things faster there. And, like, just... I mean, it can be done without it. It can be done in more algorithmic, deterministic ways that AI might be able to do faster because it's relying on approximations. But, still, I could believe that actually does exist, that you could have, with multiple radar stations, is most likely what it would do, merging that together so that you can then create, almost like in a video game, a scene with all the stuff there and the main viewers just doing that. But that would mean then that in theory, if you can adjust the sensor view, well, if you can adjust the data being fed into it, then you could move it from the torpedo, instead of being fired from down here, from the bird of prey, being fired here from the Enterprise. So I'm okay with the concept here, but it still is, That's huge. That's a major clue that Spock should have considered, and it would indicate then, because I mean, if it is the whole, we could not have fired it, the main viewer shows it matching up with us firing it. Therefore, the main viewer must be wrong. Somebody had to change that. Who is at capacity? Valeris. I mean, in theory, I could also believe Uhura and Chekhov, but Uhura wants peace, and Uhura's Uhura. Chekhov, I'm not sure, I don't think he necessarily wants peace, he doesn't necessarily want war, and it's Chekhov, he's not going to do it. But it is kind of mentioned later that Spock never thought of Valeris. He just rejected the idea or he never had the idea, tantamount to fully rejecting the idea that she could be under suspicion. When they find the Samno and Burke dead, it's actually mentioned that she used stun at close range, but specifically back here, so it would just kill the brainstem, kill them instantly. So then we have the scene in sickbay, where, because Kirk has already figured it out, he knows it's her. And Spock is stunned by this, and so is just trying not to think, which is difficult for him, but he's trying not to so that he can react, because he doesn't want to be thinking about what to do and then react too slowly. So she approaches and all that, and when it revealed it's it's her. Although one thing, where is it? Okay. He lay quietly listening to the slow, measured footsteps until an overhead light flashed on. In the movie, you can actually see Leonard Nimoy is reaching up and turns it on himself, which, in a way, that's a much more powerful way to do it. That's not just the light came on, but is he did it. He is revealing her, confirming it is her, but also revealing himself to her. That's like, I now know it is you. Like, it is a lot more powerful than just, it happens. Plus, how it reveals with the pain on his face. And that's part of what this highlight here is. Internally, he experienced a curiously sharp bitterness that verged on physical pain. He controlled it, but did not repress it. So this was betrayal. And this is after he has the line of, you have to kill, if you are logical. I don't want to, she whispers. I believe you, which is not in the movie, but we then get, but what you want is irrelevant. What you've chosen is at hand. I mean, it's a really good scene. So now we get to her portion for the conspiracy, kind of, sort of. I mean, a lot of her actual actions are left up for us to just assume based on everything that's happened. She's the one messing with the databanks and such. Is it actually... I don't remember if it's in this long highlight here, or if it's later. When... I'll read through the highlight, but basically she comes to the conclusion based on logic, her own logic, and her father's logic, and that she differentiates herself from Burke and Samno, who killed out of hatred and out of... she's still very hateful, but and out of the thrill to kill. So I'm not sure if that's in this highlight or someone else. So anyway, she felt no shame for what she had done. She had arrived at her philosophy most logically. That her father had done the same had little influence on her, except that she had had access to his most private writings. The universe tended toward consistency. That fact allowed the scientific prediction of patterns. Not really, but moving on. It was logical. It is a false assumption she has there. But it does also kind of explain why she gets this wrong. Anyway, it was logical to expect certain behaviors of stars, planets, animals, and sentient beings, given certain parameters. One could reasonably expect a human to behave in a consistently emotional fashion, just as one might expect Klingons to behave in a consistently violent fashion. Although, just pausing, I got more here. That does also, because I had pointed out and said previously, they might have thought Kirk would fight, not surrender. And so destroy the Enterprise, and now they have complete control over the narrative. That would have been very very effective, very useful for the conspiracy, but he didn't do that. That's why I hope we would have something there, and it's also kind of proving her point wrong here. But continuing, she knew this with more than just intellect. She had lost her mother, and to an extent her father, to the Klingons. She had seen what they were capable of on Zorakis, that's her homeworld. Kudar and Themis were merely continuations of a pattern. Given that, it was illogical to attempt to negotiate peace. The inherent warrior-like nature of the Klingon race made it possible to predict that, once the pacifist contingent fell from power, all treaties would be violated. Gorkon was dead. It seemed doubtful that Azadbur would survive much longer, and there were no apparent successors who embraced their peaceful philosophy. War with the Klingon Empire now or a decade in the future was inevitable. So she is rejecting the possibility of change. Which is incredibly illogical and ignorant. People most certainly do change. Single people do change. Civilizations can change as you get many people. And that's also kind of my point earlier when I was talking about how great men do not lead to change. It's the people listening to them and responding to them that produce change. So one person can change, civilization can change, culture can change. And this has been demonstrated very much throughout human history. And she should be, her point is basically only sensible from ignorance. It only works if you believe that cultures exist in a sort of steady state and that there is no variability, and that whenever there is something that goes out of line, well, it's just going to come right back, so you might as well speed that up because it'll be better that way. It's like, no, that's not how it works. We get this as well, and this is where she compares herself to Burke and Samno. Let's not waste time. This is Kirk talking. They've gotten onto the bridge. Let's not waste time, Lieutenant. Name your co-conspirators and give us the location of the peace conference. In exchange, I'll retain the murder charge and drop the rest of the specifications. I mean, in a way that makes sense, because the murder charge might be we'll just, and also he can't actually make that offer, but sort of 20 to life kind of thing, versus treason. That's typically we execute you for that. But we get that, and then that he thought she would be concerned with such mercenary issues as her own well-being angered Valeris. She had committed extreme acts for the sake of logic, for her own beliefs, with no concern for personal consequences. Did Kirk think she would stoop to plea bargaining out of fear because she had been discovered? Killing had repulsed her, had been the most difficult act of her life while you were in Starfleet. She was not like Burke and Samno. She did not kill out of hatred or desire for a thrill. She had taken no joy in it, had done it mercifully, swiftly, efficiently, and she had done it because she was convinced that the act was justified, necessary. She's also evil. This is the kind of thing that you would expect of a sociopath or a psychopath. Not good. Hang on. She tries to challenge Spock, and she had hoped to, when in his quarters, to basically confess what she was going to do to him, but by playing devil's advocate and see, okay, will he, agree with me, and then I got help here, or what? I mean, so we have the things I tried. Yeah, neither of us was hearing much. Neither of us was hearing very well that night, Lieutenant. There were things I tried to tell you about faith. Which it is funny, because in a way her reasoning is based on faith that all things will continue as they are. Spock's faith is more that, things will turn out for the better. That they will change towards a better end. Which, to be fair, is somewhat foolish, is somewhat naive, because you do have the issue of completely different cultures potentially not being able to agree. Not being able to come to a way to coexist. Sorry, but That is a fact. Even on Earth, we do have examples of that. Like on Earth today and historically. But that doesn't mean you give up faith. That means you have to come up with other solutions, which can be war. But it's, yeah. So I'm just like, she isn't right. It doesn't tend towards this consistency she thinks exists. But it's just there are times when war is necessary. This isn't necessarily that. She is making an inappropriate assumption there. And the way Spock proves this to her is interesting, but we'll get to that. So, he felt she had deceived him. The thought infuriated her. You speak of logic. Yet Sir would have the last of us bow before our killers before we take any action to protect ourselves. You contend you are Vulcan, that you seek peace at any cost, yet you serve in Starfleet, on a ship equipped with weapons capable of massive destruction. You and your crewmates have defended yourselves in the past, have destroyed other vessels and those aboard them, and now you seek peace with the Klingons? Would you trust them? He doesn't answer, but she then does the whole, you've betrayed the Federation, all of you. What do you think you've been doing saving Starfleet? That kind of nonsense. Which is also, we'll point out the whole, you've betrayed the Federation, what do you think you've been doing? Saving Starfleet. Which is, that's an interesting word choice there. Because it indicates, like, they are like, we are here to save the Federation. She's like, well, I'm trying to save Starfleet. It's like, Starfleet's purpose is to save the Federation, not itself. And that is one reason why I'm very glad, because supposedly they wanted to get Saavik in this role. It's like, no. Not Book Saavik. Book Saavik, here right now, she killing Valeros. Just, well, maybe not, but I mean, it's like, there will be no mercy for Valeros from Book Saavik. Just, and again, I think I mentioned this for Final Frontier. It would be interesting to see a Vulcan reading, studying on just war theory. And just, what would happen? I do really need to read that myself. But it's just, that I think would be very interesting to find out. Like, would they not be so convinced of the pacifist nature that Surak insisted on? But even then, as is pointed out here, Spock has not been passive. So there are exceptions. Anyway, so we get this when she's again trying to argue her case. Let them die, you said. Did I misinterpret you? Now, in the movie, I do catch that. Wait a minute. That wasn't part of the log. When would she have heard that? That was when he was talking with Spock. Kirk does catch this. Kirk turned away, unable to meet her gaze. Just a little disappointing. I'll come to that, though. I said that to Spock after the briefing with Admiral Smiley. That room was supposed to be secure. You were right, Valeris continued. They conspired with us to assassinate their own chancellor. How trustworthy can they be? But it's, you're judging all by a few, but it still is the whole, this does expose that, yes, somebody in that room is also a conspirator. But I'm just glad he did catch that. Is caught, but Kirk turned away, unable to meet her gaze. I wish that wasn't the case, and I'll explain why. Because he has already faced his own demon here about his hatred. He's already faced that. And he's defeated it, or at least we have reason to believe he has or is in the process of defeating it. So he shouldn't be turning away in shame. Because, like, no. I'm better than... what I said then was wrong. So he should be glaring at her. Because, like, yes, I said that. And I was, just in the glare, not saying it verbally, but yes, I said that, and I was wrong, and you were wrong as well. In fact, might even be able to say you are worse, because I did not act on that. You did. We then have this, which is a technical thing that's like, what? We can send a message to Starfleet Command, Uhura had suggested, if they get the names. Unlikely, Valeris said. Enterprise has disobeyed orders and harbors 2 escaped convicts. All your ship-to-shore transmissions will be jammed. Why? Why does their having disobeyed orders influence the stuff to be jammed? the communications to be jammed? Why does them harboring Kirk and Bones, who've just escaped, result in them being jammed? If anything, Starfleet would be like, we need to hear from you. Hey, we just heard from you. Great. What the hell is going on? You need to tell us that. Why is Kirk there? What the... You need to tell us everything. This is not a jamming situation. This is a tell us more. We need to hear it all. By the way, you're probably all going to be under arrest when you get here, but we need you to talk. However, it does make sense that they're still in Klingon space and are being jammed for that reason, which that could be given, but that's not what we get. It's just you're jammed because of this. It's like Starfleet would want to communicate with them. Okay, so she's not willing to give up the names, and we don't get the whole a lie, a choice. We don't get that. It's actually pretty well done in the movie. But it's also technically the scene goes very differently than the movie. So she knows what he's about to do. She drew her head away from him, resisting. His Vulcan training was superior. There is no question that he could extract whatever information he desired from her thoughts. Sorry. But to force himself on her consciousness was the mental equivalent of rape. Immoral by any standards, considered by the Vulcans to be as heinous a crime as murder. Which is like, yep. Part of the reason I highlight that is actually just straight up referring to it as rape. Just straight up doing that, as opposed to using different terms like just say a grave violation or something like that, because rape is a very charged term. In fact, it's very sad that, fortunately I don't monetize, so in theory I don't have to worry about it. And I've talked about it previously in other videos, and use the word, but it's like supposedly if you are monetizing and use a word, YouTube gets all upset. It's like, why? Having to change language like that, especially because it's like people go to saying grape instead, and it's like, this is just stupid, because now it's like, okay, well, we have an approved list of words to use in place, but contextually you know what it all is. Nothing is gained. Stop it, YouTube. So, but anyway, so them actually just straight music, I'm glad about that, because that's in the movie, it is far more obvious that's what's happening there. The book is very different. She tensed, anticipating the agony of mental intrusion that would follow. It did not. The mind touch, gentle as a caress, merely asked permission, then lingered. She closed her eyes, stunned almost to tears by this unexpected courtesy. For a long moment she wavered. Illogical for Spock to grant her this dignity, to allow lives and the course of history to hinge upon a single act of kindness. Rather than tear information from her, he opened himself. And then explains, but I didn't highlight all, just... He shares with her the time when he sacrificed himself, Wrath of Khan, end of Wrath of Khan, to save the ship. And how then they, the crew, sacrificed so much, or at least risked much, to save him. That he had sacrificed himself because the good of the many outweighed the good of the one or the few. His friends and risked their lives to save him, and Jim Kirk had told him that in this instance the good of the one outweighed the good of the many. Spock had learned that a single life was beyond value, beyond logic. To kill in the hope of saving future lives was unforgivable. Mathematics did not apply. And we do also get that she actually, and she still wished to please him, hesitatingly, she opened her mind to him. Which, this is a very clear example of how you have there are benefits to books and there's benefits to movies. In the movie, you don't need to use the word rape, because you can just look at it, and a child isn't necessarily going to understand how messed up it is, I guess is a way to put it. How horrible what is being depicted there actually is, because they're not going to truly understand it, though they see the facial reactions of everyone to know it is horrible, but not the true gravity. An adult recognizes what's going on, but then in the book, it's like, nope, because we can be in their heads. So we have that benefit of knowing that he is opening himself up to her to basically convince her that, yes, give it to me. You are wrong. The only thing you can do now is help us. You can do that in the book. You can't do that in the movie. That's... It's a good difference there. It's a good example of the difference. And I do like this because it is... showing she is wrong, demonstrating that she is wrong, is important. Because it's not just enough that, oh, she's the bad guy. Because she came to these conclusions on her own. So countering them is important. Not just we're doing this because we're the good guys. No, we're doing this because the act of killing one to save many is still murder. And it is just, yeah, it does. It is still an evil act. Now, there can be certain exceptions to that, such as imminent harm. Yeah. But this is... It's also stupid because, like, you killed one to start a war that will kill millions, but you're hoping it will save millions. Well, doesn't make much sense. Hopefully, yeah, hopefully that will get explained, because it still is kind of stupid. That's like, oh, well, we're just the war is going to happen, so we're going to do things to make it happen sooner. When it seems to be in a better position, when it seems we're in a better position, it's like, you say it's inevitable, so if you just don't act, then it'll happen. Yes, but we want it to happen now while they're weaker. It's like, wasn't the prediction that that the Klingon Empire will run out of life in 70 years? Yeah. Why then do you think waiting for, say, 60 of those years would be a bad idea? Because they'd be weaker then than they are now. You didn't think this through much, Valeos, did you? But, yeah, no, it is just, yeah. So moving on, we get this. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's why I highlighted this. Commander Her raised the Excelsior because she identifies Cartwright, which would explain the secure room not being secure. Chang, which we already knew, and Nonklus, the Romulan ambassador. Doesn't name the arms dude that we met earlier. Maybe he still is part of it and that just she doesn't know? Not sure. Hopefully we do find out how the hell Federation and Klingon got together on this. But it's like, okay, she doesn't know where the new peace conference location is. Commander Her raised the Excelsior. She ought to have the coordinates of the conference location. Why, I'm not sure, but set that aside. The captain, Kirk, frowned. Why would they give them to us? It seemed to Valeos that Spock smiled without smiling. The commander is an old friend of yours. And it's like, wait, what? Sulu, Kirk, a frightening sight in filthy, ragged furs and the untrimmed beginnings of a salt and pepper beard, broke into a grin as he recognized his former helmsman. This is from Sulu's point of view. Despite the seriousness of the situation, Sulu could not resist returning the smile. More than 3 years had passed since he had last seen Kirk, except for the silver in his hair and the grime left by Repenti. The captain had changed little. Standing by Captain Kirk, but it's like, would you believe that Kirk didn't know that Sulu's in charge of the Excelsior? He'd been in command for 10 years. And last seen 3 years ago, that was at the start of Excelsior's latest mission, the thing that we started with, well, Chapter 1 started with the surveying of the planets. It said that was 3 years. Excelsior is Sulu's ship. Kirk would know this. What the hell? What? Why are we pretend? Why is it like, hey, I had no idea? It's like, you helped him get the damn job. What are you talking about? The conference is at Kittimer, in Klingon space near the Romulan border. I'm sending the exact coordinates on encoded frequency. And it's like, huh, Kittimer's Klingon. Okay. Not sure why that would be considered a neutral location. which I think is what was described before, but it might also be it's on a border. It's a nice place. We can secure it, and we couldn't even get to Earth without a problem. Let's try a Klingon place. It's like, you know what? That's fair. We'll do that. So Sulu gives that help and all that, and Kirk is like, so we might need more than just the coordinates. There's a bird of prey that can firewall cloak that's certainly going to try to stop us. So, basically the situation is way worse than you think, so if you could, also come and help, it's like, we're in Alpha Quadrant, so it'll take a while. That, at least, with now knowing what Khitomer is, makes sense. Because previously, quadrants were just like quadrants on the map. But later in Star Trek, quadrants refer to the specific quarter of the galaxy. So there's the Alpha Quadrant, Beta Quadrant, Gamma Quadrant, Delta Quadrant. So Voyager's in the Delta Quadrant. That's up here opposite Alpha Quadrant. Gamma Quadrant is where the Dominion is. Beta Quadrant is where the Romulans are. They are the superpower that we know of in the Beta Quadrant. Technically, there might be further stuff over here that we just don't know about because Romulan border keeps us from going there. But Alpha Quadrant is dominated by the Federation and the Klingons. Now, talking about we're in Alpha Quadrant, but Khitomer is on the border with Romulans. So that is at least near Beta Quadrant. It's like, okay, that makes sense now. Or maybe it is in fact in the Beta Quadrant. It's like, okay, so they're far away. It still is. That could be, hey, we're next door. That could be, we're days away. So it's a little bit more complicated there. But it's like, we're getting some explanation there. Because it does annoy me that it's kind of like the light second thing earlier in the previous chapter, or the parsec thing in Star Wars, where it's like, that's not what this means. And they did eventually settle down on what Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta quadrants are, but I'm not sure when that fully kicked in, and yeah, anyhow. So Sulu is helping them, and it is one of those things where Valtane, his first officer and science officer, you realize you've just committed treason. And it actually describes as Sulu stretched out his legs and rested his boot heels on the con railing and gazed up at his first officer. Which actually, hang on, that doesn't make sense. Didn't say, hang on. Valtane as elbow, and it's just the con railing. It just seems odd because the railing I associate as being behind him, but Valtane is supposed to be like right there or right there at his elbow. So it was weird. But it's him putting up his boot heels. It's like, I get the whole letting Sulu be very relaxed here, but that is not appropriate. And I don't understand the actual geography of the room that makes sense. But in any case, here's his line that I also have problems with. It's a nice line. It's just nonsense. Well, silly is how I actually put it in the notes. To be candid, I always hoped that if the choice ever came down to betraying my country or betraying my friend, I'd have the guts to betray my country. That's the last highlight for this. Shortly after that, he's basically like, if anyone doesn't want to help me, you can go to your quarters. Not a problem. Don't worry about it. I understand. But Navigator, warp 9. And it's also no one leaves. But that line there about, between betraying a friend and betraying country, I'd prefer to betray country. The fuck? How are you in Starfleet? I'm sorry, but what if your friend was bad guy? I mean, what if it wasn't it's Kirk. Kirk would never do this, so I can trust him. It's like, okay, there's that, but what if it's like, Harry Mudd? Let's say it was Mudd, who technically should be a friend, kinda. I mean, not a great friend, but it's like, still, it's like, you'd rather betray your country than Harry Mudd? What kind of logic is? It's so stupid. And there's also, he's not betraying country per se, because the country would want the peace accords to go through, the peace conference to go through. And Kirk has just told him, hey, there's very likely going to be another assassination attempt. And they have this super weapon that's kind of a big problem. I'm going to use your help. So it's more of do I trust Kirk or not. It's not a am I betraying country, because him actually trusting Kirk and helping him serves his country. Country just may not know that. But that seems a little different. So it's just like, this line is stupid. I get how it's a powerful line, but it is stupid. And it's also, that's the kind of line that, yeah, it's true. That's the kind of line that legitimately Voltaire could be like, I need to relieve you of command. What? I mean, this like, do you want me to point to the line in the Starfleet oath you had to have taken that you have just said you're dismissing? And that you've always wished you'd be able to just... Dude! Captain! The hell? I get why it seems like a nice line, but once you start thinking about it, it's so stupid. There's a little bit of time left for the conspiracy to make sense. Because it's enough, this is a side thing, but there's still some time left. If the conspiracy can ultimately make sense, which is mainly, how the hell does Cartwright and Chang, how the hell do they connect? I need that explained. If we can get that explained, I'm happy with it. I will suffer this stuff and just complain about it in the review. In the written review. If that doesn't get explained, was explained poorly, then this is probably going to be a 2. Because it's like, oh my god, this is... Dillard, you were doing so well, but you are falling apart. The movie's better. I mean, it is neat getting more information about the story from the novelization. But I am feeling at this point that, yeah, the movie is the better version of the story. Which is kind of interesting because Wrath of Khan, no, that unequivocally, as great a movie as that is, it is a superior film. The novelization is better. It is. Search for Spock, it's different, so I actually kind of have those as even. Voyage Home, the movie's better. Final Frontier, yeah, movie's better. It's not good, but it's still better than the book. This one, movie's better. It's just, what's the gap? Still need to figure that out. Alright. See you next time. Let me see, how many chapters? Chapter 12 is next, and 13, then the epilogue. So, yeah. And I'm guessing the epilogue is Kirk with Carol, but maybe not. Maybe not. We'll find out, because it might also be the actual, they order us to be decommissioned. It might be that. We'll find out. We'll find out. But I am assuming that we will get Kirk back with Carol somehow. All right. See you next time.